In a faraway world where stories hide behind the walls of ancient villages, there is a tale of a man whose heart knew no mercy, and who saw money as his greatest treasure until he lost everything: his family, his dignity, and his peace of mind. What happened to him? How was his life turned upside down? Let's discover this touching story together! In a faraway village, there lived a man who was famous among the people for being so much so that he would eat one meal a day, and if he heard of a funeral being held somewhere, he would sneak to it secretly to eat free food. Despite his wealth, he would guard his only daughter like a precious treasure, refusing to marry her to anyone who would pay him a huge sum of money, taking advantage of that of everyone around him for his benefit. After a while, a man by the name of Macer Alhal came forward to address his daughter, and he offered the sum that the miserly man had asked for, so the father agreed to his request. But soon, his desire changed again, and he asked for a much larger sum. The man, who truly loved the girl, realized that the father would not agree to whatever he offered him, so he decided to put an end to this audacity. As for the daughter, she was fed up with her father's selfishness, which she could only see in his love for money. So she ran away with the man away from her father's life, and the father did not seem to be affected by her separation, but he seemed to be happy that he had gotten rid of the burden of her spending. One day, the miserly man decided to have his meal in the garden of his house, so he prepared a plate of food and put it on a special table for him. And while he was going to bring the bread from inside, a poor man passed by, returning from a hard work, so he looked at the plate and thought it was accessible to passers-by. The poor man began to eat with hunger, but the miserly man came back and attacked him angrily, shouting and beating him, and he said, "Pay the price for what you ate." The miserable man said, "I only have a little, and if I give it to you, I will not be able to feed my children. Please have mercy on me." But the miserly man, without any mercy, answered and said, "It does not concern me. Give me what you have." The poor man was forced to give him what he had, and he left with a broken heart and sadness, while the miserly man returned to eat his food, not caring about what had happened. That night, the miserly man saw a terrible dream, which woke him up. In his dream, he saw a giant phoenix chasing him, so he began to run away with all his strength, until he saw a small opening from which a faint light emerged in the horizon. The miserly man tried to cross that narrow opening, despite its difficulty, but he was surprised when he reached the other side, with a woman crying next to her husband, whose faces were full of sadness and sorrow. He felt fear and confusion, then suddenly woke up from his sleep, sweating, amazed by this strange dream. He could not ignore what he saw, so he decided to go to a good man to explain the vision to him. He sat in front of the sheik and told him the dream in detail. The sheik asked him, "Did you help anyone in the last days?" The miserly man replied, "No, no one deserves my help." The sheik contemplated his face for a moment, then said, "Think carefully. You may have given something to one of them, even if not on purpose." Then the miserly man remembered the poor man who ate a bite of his food, and how he forced him to pay what was with him. The sheik smiled and said, "With this bite, you are destined to stay longer in life, but to protect yourself from a great danger. You must give charity and help those in need." Then he added, "As for the woman you saw crying in your dream, she is your daughter, sad and hungry, because she lacks strength in her days." For the first time, the miserly man felt shame in his heart. He was affected by the sheik's words and sat silently contemplating. He realized that the money he had saved up only brought him loneliness and hardship, while his daughter was suffering away from him. The miserly man decided to change his ways. He started looking for the poor man who had been harming him for a day. After a long effort, he found himself living in a deserted hut, almost finding no shelter. The miserly man felt regret and shame, so he approached him and apologized to him honestly for what he had done, then gave him a large amount of money as compensation. The poor man was greatly affected, so he thanked him warmly, while the miserly man, for the first time, felt inner peace, which he had never felt before. but there was still a wound in his heart. His daughter. He decided to look for her to compensate her for the pain she had caused him. After asking many people, he learned that she was living in another city with her husband, so he left immediately to find her. But when he arrived in the city, he met a cunning man. He became famous for his cunningness and for deceiving strangers and other merchants. The cunning man greeted the miserly man with a passionate warmth and said to him with a smiling face, "How are you, my master? I have an offer for you. If you succeed, I will double your money, and if you lose, I will take everything you have." The miserly man's idea caught him immediately, because his love for money was still rooted in his heart. So he agreed without hesitation. But, as expected, the cunning man succeeded in deceiving him easily. In one moment, the miserly man's wealth, which he had collected throughout his life, he sat on the ground, shocked, feeling a void he had never felt before, and he felt sorry for himself. "I have lost everything! No money, no house, and not even dignity." He began to realize that the money, which he thought was the source of his strength, was in fact a trap that held him in isolation and selfishness. For the first time, he felt the pain of the poor that had always been on his back. In that embarrassing moment, his daughter passed by him by chance and was amazed to see him in this place and in this state. She approached him, amazed, and asked him, "What brought you here?" He told her his story, how he was deceived and lost all his money. The girl looked at him with sadness and horror. She, who was used to seeing him strong, dominant, controlling everything, has now become weak, desperate, powerless. She said to him politely, "Do not worry, my father. We will find a way to get your money back. But the most important thing is that you have learned a lesson from what happened." The miser hit his head, felt embarrassed, and remained silent. Then he raised his eyes to her and asked her with concern, "But how will we get the money back? This man is cunning and deceives everyone." The girl smiled with confidence and said, "Do not worry. I have a plan." The girl began to think in a clever way to deceive the cunning merchant using the same weapon against him. She had to take advantage of his greed as she had taken advantage of his greed and the greed of her father before. A wise idea came to her mind. Relying on her greed to get back what was stolen and return to her father some of his lost dignity. The girl approached her husband and explained to him her plan carefully. He agreed to help her without hesitation. Then she went to the market, where she rented 3 slaves and put on each of them a distinctive mark. She asked about the place of the deceiving merchant, until she knew where he spent most of his time. She wore elegant clothes and adorned herself with the appearance of a wealthy woman. Then she approached him steadily and said, "Peace be upon you, merchant. I heard about your excellence in negotiations, and I want to make a profitable agreement with you." The merchant raised his head, looked at her with interest, and smiled, saying, "Welcome. Tell me about your deal." He did not realize that he had fallen into a trap carefully set up for him. The girl said, "I have a large amount of rare jewels that I inherited from my family and would like to sell them. But I do not trust any merchant, so I am looking for a smart and skillful person like you." The merchant's eyes shone with desire, so he smiled and said, "You have come to the right place." Her arrogant appearance convinced him that she was very rich, so he approached her with a smirk and said, "What do you think of playing a game? If you are confident of yourself, you may earn more money." The girl appeared a little hesitant. Then she agreed. At that moment, the girl dropped her ring on the ground deliberately, and when the merchant bent down to pick it up, she took advantage of the moment and drew on his back a secret mark similar to the one she had put on the slave before. She stood firmly and said in a firm voice, "From now on, you are my slave." The merchant looked at her with anger and astonishment and said, "What are you saying? Are you crazy?" She replied, "I have put on you the same mark that my slave wears according to the law. You are mine, but I am merciful. If you do not return all the money you stole from my father, I will go to the judge and ask for you and your money." The merchant realized that he was trapped in a trap that he could not escape. He felt humiliated and afraid and had no choice but to surrender. He returned to her everything she had taken, including her father's money. The girl took the money and looked at him and said, "Now get out of our sight and never return to this city." The merchant left surprised and defeated, while her mother stood looking at her with admiration and pride. He finally realized that money had no value for him, if he was not surrounded by a family that loved him and supported him. This is where our story ends today. If you enjoyed this story and benefited from it, Do you and forget to support us by liking and subscribing to the channel to get more interesting and enjoyable stories. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next story, God willing. And don't forget, leave us a kind comment. We love reading your thoughts.